Hello, welcome back to another how to play video on the Broken Meeple. As I explained in my Alien Frontiers video some time ago, hopefully, depending on when I put this out, I have ceased to do unboxing videos on my channel because they were just not getting the views, people weren't really caring about them, and I prefer to open my game as soon as I buy it and look at all the shiny stuff inside. So I prefer to stick to the format of just doing reviews and how to plays on the channel, with maybe the odd storage solution video if deemed necessary. But enough of that, you've probably heard me say this a million times on podcasts and the blog and etc. So what this is a how to play video of Kingsburg. Now Alien Frontiers I reviewed a little while ago, and I did a how to play video last weekend. Now the idea with Alien Frontiers was that it was a worker placement game which required you to use your dice as the workers. It gets compared a lot to Kingsburg, which works in a similar manner, in that again you're trying to get victory points and it's sort of worker placement. It's a little lighter on that definition, but I think it's still classed as worker placement, and again you're using the dice to do various things. So it does get compared quite a bit. My review also compared the two and revealed that I could potentially own both games, which I do, and get a different feel out of each of them, and just generally enjoy the game for what it is. But some people may prefer one to the other. Some people may only have room or budget for one of the two. So I thought I would, this weekend, carry on with the theme. I've already done an Alien Frontiers review. I've already done an Alien Frontiers how to play. So this time I am now doing a Kingsburg how to play, and I will also do a Kingsburg review. So hopefully you will be able to read both of them and get a decent idea of which one you prefer. Maybe you like both, maybe you don't like any of them at all. We'll see how that goes. But for now, let's kickstart with Kingsburg. Okay, to give an overview of how the game plays out, it plays out a bit simpler than Alien Frontiers does. In this game, you're, again, trying to get victory points, but instead of building colonies now, you are building buildings in your district. You are effectively the governor of a district, and the king wants you to build a prosperous city in his kingdom. However, you're going to need help. You can't do this alone, you're going to need advisors, and that's what all of these characters along the middle here represent. All the different advisors, all the way up to the king himself, that can give you resources, gold and special abilities, that kind of thing, to help you through the 5 years that this game plays over. As I said, it plays over 5 years and is split into 4 seasons, of which there are 2 rounds per season. One of these rounds is purely just a bonus that's given to all players, so it's more of a bookkeeping exercise. The other round, though, is where the magic happens with rolling the dice. At the end of each year, there is a combat round in which monsters of varying like fantasy-style monsters, goblins, orcs, all the way up to undead and dragons, invade your city, and you need to be able to fend them off. But this is a Euro game, so don't think that you're getting into like weird miniatures or anything like that. It's a Euro style of fighting them, but it's still quite a nice little cool fantasy theme on there. Now, in order to set up the game, it's relatively straightforward. Obviously, you have your giant board, and I've set this up for a 3-player game. Okay, can you see my fingers? Yeah, never mind. 3 players. So 2-player there's a slight variant, and 4 would just take too long. So I think 3 players should give enough of an overview in this video. Now, first of all, you obviously need the board, and each player needs to take his coloured tokens and dice representing his colour. So he will have 3 dice of his colour, and he will have 3 of these little, maybe you can see that, something like that, yep, 3 of these little discs. One will go on this chart here at the top, which represents the combat military value of each person's city. One will go down here, which represents a scoring track, which is all the way around the outside, typical layout for a Euro game, but very nice big numbers though. I do like the fact that you can actually easily see what score everyone's got. And the other one is randomly placed on this turn order chart. Doesn't matter how it's done really for the first turn, it's just completely random because it's going to change in just a second. Now, what differs in my setup is that normally you have spaces for the resources. So you've got one for wood, one for gold, one for stone, and you've got a space here for +2 tokens. The +2 tokens represent ways that you can add 2 to your die rolls in order to get higher advisors, but I'll go on to those maybe a little bit more later. However, What I have with this game is that obviously putting the resources on the board can get a little fiddly. So I've managed to acquire one of these little boxes from, I can't remember if this was a tackle shop or Hobbycraft, something like that. And basically they're just your typical boxes that open and shut and have compartments and dividers. So I put all my resources in here at the top. I put the tokens for each player where you show on your building chart. I'll get onto that later. And the additional white die and +2 dice tokens, which basically allow you to do extra things. So normally where there's space for that, I just simply go plop. There it is. Job done. Granted, the lid does cover the scoring track, but you can get around that. It's not that much of a big deal. Each player will also need one of these. This is a building chart which represents the different types of buildings that you can construct. Now, I'm just going to say this very quickly as a disclaimer. I have expanded this game with the Kingsburg to Forge a Realm expansion, which I put on my top 10 essential expansions list on the podcast, and you can also find a geek list for it on BoardGameGeek. Now, what this expansion did was that normally you got this chart with only 5 rows of buildings. In the expansion, you get these new boards with 7 rows, so it opens up more buildings. Now, as a result that I always play this with the expansion included, I threw away the old boards that only had 5 rows on them. So you are going to notice that this has 7 rows on it, but I will not be using the additional rows that came with this game. So, well, to be more accurate, I won't use more than 5 rows for explaining the game. So you're just going to have to bear with me for that. Okay. Each player will have one of these, and obviously, yes, there's not much room on the camera for you to see a full view of each of them, but what I will do is that I will zoom into them when I'm explaining the building phase. Other than that, you have a envoy token here, which is placed here, which I'll get onto later in the game, and you have 2 purple discs, similar to the player ones, one of which is placed on the timer track to represent what year you're on, and one that's placed on the season track to represent what stage of the year you're on. So they're effectively just timers. Finally, you have this little deck of cards here. There are multiple cards for each year in the game. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are the potential monsters that you are going to be fighting during the course of the game. You select one from each year and you place them on top of each other so that the first year is on the top, then second, third, fourth, fifth. Simple, self-explanatory. This way you get a nice variety of monsters that are going to attack. Take note that let's see if I can get this closer to the camera. You will notice there is a level range at the bottom there, 2 to 4 for the first level. It goes up in increments over the course of the game, and this represents the potential difficulty of the monster that will come out in that round. It could be a weak 2, it could be a powerful 4, and this obviously goes up during the course of the game. So it adds that little bit of element of, I don't know, do I have enough to beat them off? I might be a bit low, but could I take a chance? So there's an element of push your luck there. And that's all you need to set up the game. The game is ready to go. So let's go through the first year of the game. So, I'm not going to go through all 5 years because the 5 years play out pretty similarly. So I'm going to go through the first turn, which will effectively be the first season, spring. And then I'm going to go through the rest of the year all the way up until the combat phase. And that should give you a pretty good overview of how the game runs. Okay, random little extra add-on here. In between the takes, I am sipping green tea with honey. Trust me, if you haven't tried it, try it. It's lovely. It's a nice soothing drink, and it's so soothing. Anyway, I digress. That's just me and my tea drinking habits. So on with the game. So we're going to go on to the first term. So at the moment, the timer track down here is on the first round, and the timer track over here is on the first year. No surprise there. Now, each of these rounds here, and in fact actually, I'm going to come around and show you on the camera. Okay, hopefully you can hear me from the back here. So you can see that the timer track on the season is on round 1. Round 1, 3, 5 and 7, which you can't see in this particular view, represent almost like the bookkeeping phases. You get a bonus depending on whether you've got the least buildings, the most buildings, that sort of thing. Round 2, 4 and 6 is where you roll the dice to place on these advisors, and then round 8 is when you do the combat round. If if I just pan over to the right, you can see there's round 7 where you can do a bookkeeping action, and then if I move over to there, yep, you can see round 8 is when you do the combat. Once round 8 is done, you move that timer track on the right there to year 2, and you move the season track all the way back to round 1, and you rinse and repeat. So that's effectively how the timer goes. So in the first phase, we have this round before spring. The symbology at the top there means that whoever has the least amount of buildings gets to roll an additional white die that I have placed here during this round, and only this round in spring. If there is a tie, then you check whoever has the least amount of goods as well to see who gets the die. If there is still a tie, then the king basically helps them all out by giving them one good of their choice. Now on the first round, obviously no one's built anything yet, so everybody ties for goods and for the buildings. So basically the king helps everybody out, and now each of the players can choose a good of their choice. So the blue player, who I'm going to have over here, is going to actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the dice next to their resources. So I'm going to have the blue here, have the green there, and the yellow there. So hopefully you'll be able to get a rough idea of what's going on. So blue's going to have a wood, the green is going to decide to have a gold, so place a gold here, and just to be different, the yellow is going to have a stone, so a stone here. That's the first round. It then moves on to phase 2, spring. And this is where all the dice rolling magic happens. Now there's no white die, so I'm going to put that back in the box. So. And now, this is where things get interesting. Everybody rolls their die simultaneously. All 3 of their die. You don't get extra die unless you get that white die that I mentioned earlier, so you don't get additional coloured die, you just have your 3. So I'm going to roll 3, 3, 3. Okay, first step is that you total up what the total values of all 3 die are for each players. So if I move the dice there as such, now naturally I don't think you can see quite the face values at that angle, I do apologise, but essentially this is a 3, 3 and a 1, so that totals 7. This is a 5, 6 and a 1, so that totals 12. And this is a 6, 4 and a 4, so that's 14. Now, the lowest value gets to place his dice on the advisors first in a round, and then the turn order is done in sequential order of that. So, in this case, obviously green rolled the lowest, so green is now the new first player. So, we just shift these over to the side a second. Green now becomes first player. The next person who had the lowest was blue with 12, so blue becomes second in the round. Yellow rolled the highest, so yellow is last. That is the downside to rolling high. You might find that certain advisors will be blocked. So you keep the dice as you've rolled them, so I'm just going to put them to the side on the scoring track for the time being. Not mix them up. And now green gets to place his advisors first. Now green's a bit limited, unfortunately. He rolled a bit low. But now green has a choice. Each advisor has a number from 1 to 18, and in order to use the advisor, you put a number of die on that space equal to the number of the advisor. So for example, if I wanted to use this guy here who gives me 2 gold, then I would need to place dice totaling 8. You can use the +2 tokens I mentioned over here to add 2 to the value of a die and stick them on there instead. But essentially, and you don't have to use all 3 die, you can use 2 die. Obviously you can't, if you've got a +2 token, you could just use 1 6 there, so 6 and the 2 is 8. But obviously if you're going to use these higher ones, you're going to have to commit more dice to them, and obviously with these lower ones, you can just use single dice. Green didn't roll very high, in fact his total was only 7, which is not particularly good, we have to say. But he's going to have to make do with what he's rolled. So in this case, he doesn't have many options available. He could commit every single die for the 7. That's not particularly efficient. It gives him a +2 token, it gives him 1 resource of his choice, that's what the little green bag means. But other than that, it's not particularly great. So he's going to decide to split them up. Now you can't place multiple die on the same guy and use him twice. So I can't place a 3 on him and then place another separate 3 on him to use him twice. Doesn't work. And also, whichever advisor I commit to with my dice, no other player can use that advisor. So there is a blocking element that green has to be considering. It may be possible to really screw the other players out of a single one of their die on the basis that you've nicked all the lower spaces. So there is an element to rolling low. So he's going to commit a 3 here to the wood space. And then he is going to commit the other 2 dice to this space here and use the 4 advisor. Now this one here gives a wood. So he takes a wood out. So he's got a lot of wood. Now he thinks he's got too much wood. This one gives him a gold or a wood. That's what the separating line means. So he's going to take a gold. Not the best turn. Could be better. But, you know, that's what happens when you're rolling dice. Okay, before I take blue's go, you will notice the resources have disappeared off this line here. That is because I have moved them onto their respective charts with a colour of their token so that I can remember which player is playing which. Purely because of my short-term memory loss that I have just recently experienced. Now, getting on with the blue player. He has a 6, 5 and a 1. So he could go all the way up to 12. He could have an 11 and a 1. He could have a 1, 6 and a 5. He could have a 7 and a 5. He could have a 6 and a 6. No, he couldn't have that. See? Try to catch you out there. 2 6s, can't do that, so that's not available. So the dice dictate the options that you have, and you've got to make the best choice as to which ones you want to use. Now, in his case, he is going to use the 6 and the 5 to take this little sort of hobbit guy here, or dwarf maybe even, and collect 2 resources. So he has a choice of a stone and a gold, or he can take a stone and a wood. He's going to opt for a stone and a wood. Stone and a wood. This is now going to give him 1 of each resource to play with, so he's got a little bit of variety and a little bit of flexibility. The 1 can only go on 1 space, the 1. The little flag means a victory point in this game, so he instantly gets 1 victory point. We then move on to yellow. Yellow rolled the highest, but gets to place last. He could go all the way up to 14 advisor here, the assassin, which allows him to trade in a victory point for 3 resources. Now you can't go on to negative victory points, so he can't use that assassin yet. So he's going to have to think about what else he can do. Well, he could have 2 4s for an 8, 6 and a 4 for a 10 and a 4, and that's pretty much it actually, because unfortunately he has rolled multiples which limit the dice that you can use, obviously, for totals. And on top of that, green has already nicked the 4th space, which means he can't stick a 4 there. So he can't afford to have a single 4 left on his turn. A bit of an annoyance, really. So now he is forced, really, to use the 2 4s as an 8 and the 6 as a 6, otherwise he risks wasting dice. Not his ideal setup that he would have liked, but it could have been worse. So 2 4s are going to go onto here for 2 gold, and the 6 is going to go onto here, which allows him to trade a particular type of resource for 2 other particular types. So at this point he's going to take the 2 gold, and he could keep the 2. He could trade one of those gold, or he could trade the stone that he has for something else. In this case, he is going to decide to hog a bit of the gold, really, and trade the stone that he has. So he trades that stone in, and according to the chart on the board, he gets 4 stone, a gold, and a wood. So 1 gold, 1 wood. Adds to his stockpile. And that's effectively how you place the workers in the round. At the end of placing these guys, you are now able to build in your district. I will now take the camera and show you the chart and hopefully explain a bit easier with that. Okay, so what you are seeing now is Green's player board. As stated, to represent the fact that I'm not using the expansion, I'm not going to use the bottom 2 rows of the board. I can't recall which one the expansion added, whether I'm accidentally using one of the expansion rows, but they all function in pretty much the same way. They each have a cost of what it is to build that particular building. They have a special ability, and they have a victory point bonus that it gives you straight away. Now, what Green can decide to do is that he only has a gold and 2 wood. Now, you don't have to build in a particular round. You can choose not to and just hold on to the resources, or you can build and carry on with it. Green has decided that he wants to go across this row here. You have to start off at number 1 column, There's a number 2 column, there's a number 3 column, and there's number 4. You have to start off at 1, and then in order to progress across the row, obviously you have to go from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. You cannot skip ahead and suddenly jump to number 3. You do not have to start on row A and then do row B. You do not even have to fulfill all the rows. You can choose whatever rows you want to do depending on how you want to play the game. Now, Green is deciding that he wants to go down the sort of commerce style building, so he's got inn, market, farms, merchants guild, that kind of thing. So the first building here is the inn. It requires 1 gold and 1 wood. So 1 gold, 1 wood, as you can see here, into the box. He then takes one of his colour tokens and places it on the space where it had the cost to represent that he has built it. The inn doesn't give any victory points, so he doesn't get any victory points right now, but the special ability reads, at the end of summer, each year, you receive a +2 dice token. So Green is hoping to capitalise for his bad luck of rolling on grabbing some easy +2 tokens. And because we're about to enter the summer season, he's about to get one of those +2 tokens soon, so it might benefit him now. Let's have a look and see what yellow and blue are going to decide to do. Okay, now we are looking at Blue's board. I'm zooming into a specific area because Blue has decided that he wants to make certain that he can survive all the combat problems that are going to come in the game without having to rely on recruiting more soldiers or using advisors to give him military strength. So he's going to start with the guard tower here. The guard tower gives him +1 bonus in battle and gives him 1 victory point and costs a gold and a stone to build. So there's his gold and the stone. In the box they go. He takes one of his blue tokens and places it on the guard tower to represent that he's built it, and by doing so he gains another victory point, so he's now up to 2. Now to pan up we go on to the yellow player. Whee! There we go. Now, you do not have to build the same thing that your opponents have done, but you can. There's complete flexibility of what you want to do in this game. However, yellow has a nice stockpile of gold, so he's going to go for something that actually does cost a fair bit of gold and go down that route. So he's got 2 gold here. He is then going to put them in the box and build himself a statue. So he takes the yellow token, shifting the box there, and places it on the statue space. That gives him 3 victory points straight away, which takes him above blue. And the special ability of the statue reads, at the beginning of each productive season, and by productive I mean the ones where you roll for the advisors, if you have rolled the same number on all your dice, you may re-roll one of them. This can potentially get him out of the situation where when you roll all the die and get the same number, you're very limited on what spaces you can put them on. This gives him a little bit of a get-out clause. Doesn't always come into play, but it's relatively useful, and obviously because it doesn't come into play as much, it's worth more victory points. So that's the building phase. Okay, we're back to the main board, and now that everyone has decided what building they're going to do, the timer track moves from round 2 to round 3. This is another bookkeeping phase. Now in this phase, the special ability of this round is that whoever has built the most buildings gains a victory point. All 3 players built a building in this round, so each of them are tied for the main building. With this particular ability, however, there is no tiebreaker. It's just that everybody who has the most buildings, whether there's a tie or not, gains a victory point. So 1 for yellow, 1 for blue, and 1 for green. Then moves on to round 4. So you can see that these 1, 3, 5 and 7 rounds are pretty quick. They are literally just find out who's got the most or least of something and do it pretty much. So round 4 is summer. So again, dice come back and they're all rolled. I'm just going to roll them all as one big group. Okay, yellow has got a 1, 2 and a 4 to make 7, so that's his bad roll. Green has got a 1, 1 and a 6, so he's not exactly doing much better. And blue has a 1, 4 and a 5. So yellow has managed to total 7, green has managed to total 8, and blue has managed to total 10. We now look at the turn order chart up here, and we see that yellow now has the lowest value this round, so now he shoots up to first place. Green has the second lowest, so he is now the second place player, and blue has the highest, so he is now the third place player. To briefly explain what happens when you get a tie, if there is a tie, whoever was higher than the other player on the previous round retains that position. So let's say the turn order is as it is now, so yellow, green and blue. Let's say in the next round green and blue tie for whatever they roll and yellow remains the first player. Green would still remain higher than blue because green was already above blue in the previous round. Hope that makes sense. So now let's have a look at the dice and put them to one side for a minute. Not in the scoring track, we don't want those there. Over here, there we go. So we kickstart off with player 1. Player 1 has a 4, 2 and a 1. Yep, his options are pretty limited again. What he's going to do though is that he's going to try and use up a lot of the lower value spaces to make life a bit more tricky for the others who have also not rolled very highly. So he's going to nick the jester there for number 1. He's going to nick him for the 2 and him for the 4. So he gets 1 victory point, 1 gold, and a choice of a gold or wood. Now he is going to decide that because he's continuing along the row which required a lot of gold to build stuff, he's going to take even more gold. So there we go. 2 gold, and a victory point. He would have liked to have got himself a stone, but oh well, you can't always get what you want. We then move on to green. 6, 1 and a 1. Now he's got a problem. The 1's already been taken by the yellow, so he can't go there, so he can't afford to have a 1 on its own, otherwise he wastes it. So if he doesn't want to waste it, he's got to combine all of them in order to make 8. But maybe he wants the 7. It's hard to say, it depends what he wants. But he's going to take this opportunity, combine the whole lot, and go to 8 for 2 gold. We then move on to blue. 5, 4 and a 1. He could go all the way up to 10. He could get a 9, but the problem is that would leave him with a 1 that he can't place. And he could do a 5 and a 5, but he can't because you can't have 2 on 5. So his options are becoming quite limited here. He can't even have a 6 and a 4 because the 4 has been taken. Yellow has done his job of making life very difficult for the blue player. So in this case, if he doesn't want to waste his go, he needs to combine everything into 10, which he's going to do. He's going to stick everybody on the 10 because that will allow me to show you the military track chart. The blue symbol shield with 2 swords sticking out of it represents military strength. This chart at the top here, you might not be able to see it. You can see where my fingers are there at the top. That is the military track chart. Each of the players has their little disc that I mentioned before on that chart. Hopefully in fact, I'm going to go pan the camera. That's not a good view for you guys. There we go. Maybe that's a bit clearer for you now. So you can see this track at the top here where I've got my 3 discs. Everybody has a combat value of 0 at the moment. Blue has taken the... You can almost see, each of these has a name, but I can't remember their names off the top of my head. He's kind of like the captain of the guard, general, that type of thing. And he gives 2 extra military strength. So blue is off to a start where he's almost feeling confident he can take on the level 1 villains. The little sort of pink flame symbol there allows him to look at the top card of the combat deck, which is these cards down here, and find out what is actually coming. So it's kind of like, you know, a messenger has come to you and warned you of impending danger. The advantage of this though is that only you know what's coming and the other players don't. So he's going to look at the top card and it's revealed to be goblins. Love it. Here we go. Nasty little goblins. The number at the top represents their level, which as you can see is a 2. So they're fairly weakish goblins. He knows that they're weak, and he knows that since he just grabbed himself 2 military strength, he is already equaling their combat value. Now, they have a red and a blue section to the card. If you beat them by exceeding their combat strength, then you get the reward in the blue area, which in this case is an extra wood. Yep, might as well look at there. If you equal their strength, then you neither get a failure or a reward because you've only just managed to fend them off. If, however, your strength is lower, you have to suffer every negative that is in the red, and the negatives are nasty. You do not want to lose combat in this game. It is very nasty. It can destroy buildings, it can remove victory points, remove resources, the works. So he knows that the enemy coming is a pretty easy enemy to beat. He's only equaling them at the moment, so if he gets one more military strength, he can beat them. He doesn't have to tell the other players this, and he blatantly isn't going to. You could even bluff to the other players and say that the enemy coming is quite high. But then chances are nobody's actually going to believe you, so maybe you might say that they're really easy to beat and make them think that they have to go stupidly high in military strength, which stops them building buildings. Who knows? Nothing in the game that says you can't do that, so I recommend that as a good bluffing tactic. So everybody has placed their dice, and now we move on to the building phase. Now, in this case, I will have to go and zoom on the charts again, but I'm only going to zoom on the charts for this round only because you will have seen the charts and hopefully it will make sense to you now. And I want to be able to get through the whole of this year, so this will be the last time I'm going to zoom in on the charts. Okay, yellow went first, so we're going to build his building first. Now, yellow doesn't have a stone in order to... Oops, sorry for the nudge there. Yellow doesn't have a stone in order to build the chapel, which is the building after the statue. So he's going to build the inn instead. So he takes a wood and a gold from his pile and places his token on the inn, which gains him this little +2 token here at the end of summer, which is now. Moving on to blue. Now, blue has a problem. I'm only using the top 5 rows for this game, and in these top 5 rows, none of the areas allow him to build anything for only 1 wood. So this is a round which he's going to have to sacrifice building anything, and so does nothing. Moving on to the green player. Now, in green's case, he has 2 gold and 1 wood. He could build the statue, which is what the other player had. However, he is choosing not to because he wishes to progress down a different path. Unfortunately, he doesn't have the resources in order to afford to build the market, which comes after his inn, or build one of the other rows, so he too is going to take a break from building anything. However, you will notice that because he has built the inn, he too must have one of these. Whoop. Wait for a little focus. If not, I'll just place it on the board here. And there you go. He gets one of those +2 tokens as well because it's the end of summer now and he has built the inn. Okay, it is now the end of summer. We take the dice back and we move the token to round 5. Now, round 5 means that whoever has the least amount of buildings gets this, the King's Envoy marker. That allows a player to use an advisor that someone else has already used. It also allows the player to perform a double build action on his turn if he so wishes. Unfortunately, 2 players last round decided not to build anything, so there is a tie. In this instance, neither one gets the King's Envoy, so bad luck to those players. We now move on to round 6 in the autumn. Again, roll the die. Okay, blue's done really bad again for a 6, 4, 1 and a 1. The yellow has done exceedingly well with a 4, 5 and a 6, and the green has done not particularly great either with a 1, 1 and a 6. So, yeah, well, not all good on that front. The turn order is now updated, so quite clearly blue rolled the lowest. So blue goes to first place. The green has easily done the second worst, so he remains in second place. Yellow has clearly rolled the highest, so yellow goes all the way down to third in order. Move the dice to the side and place the advisors again. So blue has got limited choice and doesn't have a lot that he can really do. However, blue is getting onto the combat phase and knows that there is a weak enemy coming. So he wants to beat the enemy. He doesn't want to just simply, get by it. But he does know that he's got 2 military strength here and 1 from his guard tower that he built earlier on. So he knows that he's already beaten it, so he doesn't have to worry about getting any more military. So instead, he's going to place his 4 here and bump these together to have a 2. So he gets a gold from here and his choice of a gold or wood from here, and he's going to choose a wood. So a gold and a wood. Gold and wood. Green is now just as limited as before. Now green has one of those +2 dice tokens, so he could use it in this instance, although he would probably rather use it to gain a decent footing somewhere rather than use them all on the same dice. However, he is a bit worried that his combat value is quite low and we're getting onto the combat round. So he's going to put all his dice onto here, which, oops, sorry, flipped one there, which normally 8 is not 10. But he's going to place his +2 token on there as well, which now makes it 10, which enables him to use the Captain of the Guard ability. So he gets 2 military strength on this track up here. And he gets to look at the top card of this deck. We already know it's the goblins, so now he has this information. A quick note to make about the +2 tokens. You cannot use a +2 token on its own, and you cannot use it just with a white die. In order to influence an advisor, you have to use at least one of your coloured dice. So if you get bonus die and bonus tokens, you can't just use them on their own. You have to use one of your coloured dice, otherwise it's not allowed. Now yellow has got a 4, 5 and a 6. He can go all the way up to 15, which allows him to get one of each resource. That's quite a powerful ability. He could also split it to get some military strength and some, extra resources somewhere else maybe, although he can't use the 10 because that is now being nicked. So he could go for a 5 and a 6, but then the 4 is being taken. So what's yellow to do in this instance? He could also use his +2 token, you might also remember. So he could combine the whole lot and make 17. And that's his choice. He's going to use 17 and use the +2 token to give himself use of the Queen. Now the Queen enables him to get 2 resources of his choice. Now he's thinking, I could get what I need to build. However, he is uncertain of whether he's going to have any combat ability this round. So he's going to try and build the guard tower to give him a little bit of a boost. But he's going to need stone. So he's going to grab himself 2 stone. He gets 3 victory points for using the Queen. So that's 3 victory points for yellow. And he gets to look at the top card. Uh-oh, it's the goblins and they're level 2. And he has no military strength right now. He needs to get at least 2 to avoid any problems. All the dice have been placed. We then go on to the building phase. And as I said before, I'm not going to draw out this video by doing any more shots of the building mat. So I am just going to talk to you about what the other players are doing, and you should have got an idea of how that building works. Blue, for example, has decided to build the next stage in his chart after the guard tower and is building the blacksmith. It costs him a gold and 2 wood, and that allows him to get another +1 in combat, so he's preparing for later combats as well, and a victory point for building it. So 1 there for blue. Green is deciding that he needs to get some... He's deciding that he doesn't necessarily need to beat the military strength, so he's not going to be too fussed about it. So what he's instead deciding to do is think of whether there's any other buildings that he could possibly make. Now, ideally he would like to build the market. Again, he is short by 1 wood though, so he has no option there. He could build the statue instead though for 2 gold, and that's what he's going to do. 2 gold, 1 green token to represent he's built it, and that gives him 3 victory points. Now yellow has only 2 gold in his arsenal, so chances are he's not going to be able to actually build anything, and you would be right. There is nothing that he can build for 2 gold, so he's opting out of the building phase. We then move on to round 7. Round 7's ability is that you can pay 2 resources of any kind and hire more military strength. So you can prepare for round 8 and hope that he's going to do some good, although yellow is in a bit of a predicament at the moment because he wasn't able to build himself some significant defences. So he's going to opt out of doing any resources for building, so he's going to pay his 2 gold and hire 1 military strength. It's not going to be enough to take out the military dudes, but at least if he has to lose resources, it's not the end of the world because he hasn't got any resources to lose. Now, in the case of blue and green, they feel pretty confident about their ability to survive the combat, so they're not going to hire anyone. So therefore, we move on to round 8, the last part of the year. The monsters come and invade, the goblins, as mentioned. The goblins have an attack strength of 2. So to recap on the attack strength of the various players, yellow only has 1, blue and green have 2 on the track. However, blue has built the guard tower and the blacksmith, which gives him a total of an extra +2 in combat, so he has a total of 4 combat value. Green only has 2, yellow only has 1. The yellow has lost the combat, so the yellow has to suffer all the negatives on these goblins, and this is quite nasty. He loses a wood. Oh wait, he doesn't have a wood. He loses a stone. Oh wait, he doesn't have a stone. He loses a victory point. That is a shame. But worst off, he loses a building, so he has to get rid of one of the tokens on his track, and he gets rid of the inn. Ooh, that stung a bit. That's going to hurt him for the rest. That's going to hurt him for the early game. Green ties with the enemy because he has a strength of 2 and they have a strength of 2, so he suffers no positives but doesn't get any of the rewards either. Blue completely minces the goblins and has them for breakfast, so he gets the reward at the bottom of the goblin card, which hopefully you can just about see is +1 wood. So he gets +1 wood. Job well done. Round 8 therefore finishes, and this moves all the way back to round 1, and this track here moves to round 2, and the entire year plays out in the same way that we've just seen for year 1, with the only major difference being that now in this first round here, when it says who's got the least buildings will get a bonus die, there is now more of an indication of who's got that. In this case, it's yellow, because yellow, poor yellow, lost a building. So this white die will belong to him. And that is a general overview of how Kingsburg works. Each year you will do the same thing for the 5 years. You will go through those 8 phases. So you've got the 1, 3, 5 and 7 phases, which represent the sort of bookkeeping, who's got the most buildings, who's got the least buildings. You will go through 2, 4 and 6, which are the productive seasons, which is rolling for the advisors and building your buildings. And then finally you will have phase 8, which is fighting off the combat, which in year 2 is going to be strength 5 zombies. Quite nasty looking zombies there. Strength 5, a nasty negative of 2 victory point loss, but a bonus of 1 victory point if you kill them. But they're strength 5. That is the hardest adversary you can face off in year 2. Blue's feeling confident. Green's a little bit yellow needs to get some catching up on the military side, otherwise he's going to get absolutely screwed. But the rounds rinse and repeat, so you're rolling these dice. You're using white dice if you've got them as bonus dice to your roll. You obtain these +2 tokens to add to the rolls so that you can hire better advisors. You collect the various resources of wood, stone and gold, build your buildings, get as many victory points, and by the end of round 5, whoever has the most victory points wins the game. So that's my overview of the Kingsburg game, and hopefully this has given you A, an understanding of how to play the game, and B, has helped you to make a decision as to whether you would prefer this game or Alien Frontiers. Personally, I like both games and have both in my collection. However, some people will decide between one and the other, and some people may believe that, the games are too similar to have, they may not like either of them, because you should like worker placement games if you're going to like any of these games. But some will decide that one is better than the other, and some will decide that both are different enough that you can have both in your collection, like I do. One is more sci-fi, one is more fantasy. This one's a bit easier to play through because you're doing the sort of same thing each year and the phases are quite self-explanatory. But Alien Frontiers has more involved in it, so it depends whether you want more meat, more ease. There's a lot of differences, and you're going to have to just make your decision as to which you prefer. There will be a review of Kingsburg uploaded very soon, the same weekend I post this video, so hopefully that will help you to make a decision in that respect. But I already have the Alien Frontiers review and the Alien Frontiers How to Play video uploaded, so you can check that out as well on the blog and the YouTube channel. But for now, that's it from me. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll be back next time with either a how to play video or another review on the YouTube channel. There will be more reviews coming on the blog, and there's another podcast coming soon as well. So I thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next time on The Broken Meeple. Take care and enjoy the rest of your weekend.